This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Anindo Mel, standing in for Eben Janssen. This show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park, where it's streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now, South Africa is facing a medicine supply crisis, and today we talk to Stockout about their second survey highlighting the nationwide chronic shortages of essential medicines. We cross to Port Elizabeth as murder-accused Christopher Panayotou is back in court after being refused bail. There's a look at how Egypt could be nearing a new era of transformation, and end with a look at what we can expect from the Rugby World Cup that is now less than 100 days away. But first, let's take a look at the news of the day. Trade Union Nehawu has confirmed that COSATU-affiliated unions will no longer accept government wage deals. Yesterday, public sector unions withdrew from a 3-year wage deal with the state because of a dispute over its implementation. This decision by unions could reverse the progress made during almost 7 months of negotiations and could lead to more strike action. The government initially signed a 7% wage increase for the first year in a 3-year contract, but settled on an increase of only 6.4%. A legal opinion is expected to be announced by the end of June. Port Elizabeth Magistrate Abigail Beaton is expected to provide her reasons why she denied bail for murder-accused Christopher Panayotou. Beaton has described the application as urgent, as there has already been many delays in the case. Christopher is thought to be the mastermind behind his wife's abduction and murder. Jay disappeared on the 21st of April after last being seen outside her home. Eskom has implemented stage 1 load shedding this morning. Power cuts will last until 10 o'clock tonight due to a shortage of generation capacity. The utility has warned that due to cold weather conditions this week, more power cuts can be expected. The South African Football Association and the Sports Department have 30 days to respond to the DA's application requesting a response on South Africa's bid to host the 2010 World FIFA Cup. The Democratic Alliance says it will not rest until the truth is revealed on the FIFA corruption scandal. The scandal relates to the payment of 120 million rand to a development program in the Caribbean. African Union Chair Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma earlier announced that one of the main themes of this year's AU Summit will focus on creating more opportunity for women to be placed in leadership positions. The summit of the African Union's Executive Council started yesterday, and the dialogue precedes the AU heads of state this weekend.
The theme of the summit is on women's empowerment, and I think that's very important because women are the majority of the people on the continent, and if we don't empower them and they become drivers of our development, we will be developing at a much slower pace. So that theme is very important.
And South Korea has confirmed 14 new cases of the Middle East respiratory syndrome. The disease has infected 126 people in South Korea and killed 11 since it was first diagnosed just over 3 weeks ago. The outbreak has been described as the largest outside Saudi Arabia. 2 hospitals have been sealed off for at least 11 days, with at least 133 people inside, and more than 2,000 schools have closed. Now, the Mineral Resource Minister called an urgent meeting yesterday to discuss the situation at Blyvoortgesig mine near Charltonville. The local mining community has been without running water for close to a month because the mine, which is currently being liquidated, owes the municipality close to 200 million rand. The matter is now destined for the courts. To talk about the outcome of the meeting, we're joined in Pretoria today by the spokesperson of the Department of Mineral Resources, Advocate Howdy Maofe. I thank you for joining us this morning, sir.
Good morning.
If we can just start with the urgent meeting that was held yesterday, what was the outcome of that meeting held by the Minister?
Yes, the meeting held by Minister Ngwakura Matlhodi yesterday involved a number of departments from national, provincial to local government. Purpose of that meeting was to look at ways and means in which we can address the plight of workers of that mine, which is under liquidation now. As you rightly said, that they've not been having water for the past month or so. The outcome of that meeting yesterday has two legs, the short term and the long term. The short term is that the liquidators of that mine are now going to pay an amount of 600,000 rands to the Merafong municipality, and after which that amount is for water. And once the Merafong municipality receives that amount of money, they will then reopen the water taps so that our people around there can have access to water. It's an essential part of life, water. There's no way in which anyone can live without water. And that is also even guaranteed in terms of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Anyway, the Department of Social Development, through its agency, SASA, is going to urgently go into that community to commence with the profiling of the vulnerable people in that area, so that once they've done that profiling, they can then provide them with the necessary social relief that they need. That is short term, and I think that is going to go a long way in terms of alleviating the plight of those people. I must say, though, that the 600,000 rands that is going to be paid can only get the municipality to deliver water for a month. So inside this month where they will be delivering this water, our Director General, Dr. Ramuncha, will engage with other stakeholders in government to see if perhaps there are no other ways in which perhaps some help can be given, because there's no point providing this essential service for a month only to get people to be destitute again after a month. That is the long term. And I must say that the meeting which was convened by Minister Ramatlhori yesterday proved to be fruitful in that all of us in government, intergovernmental officials, appreciate the importance and the agency with which this matter should be handled.
What was the last word that you've received from the mining management at Bly Vooruitsig?
Well, you've got to understand that once the mine is under liquidation, it is controlled by the liquidator. In the meeting yesterday, it was impressed that we should meet with the liquidators to try and find out the status of their report now, how far are they in terms of this liquidation process. But we also would want to urge the liquidators to accept reasonable offers from would-be buyers. We know, as the Department of Mineral Resources, that there are a number of interested investors who have the requisite skills and who are interested in buying that mine. And we hope that we will be engaging with the liquidators through the Master's Office, Master's Office were part of the meeting yesterday, because it's in our interest that that mine should reopen. So if there are investors who can come in and buy that mine, that would help in saving a number of jobs rather than prolonging the process of liquidating that mine.
Well, Mr. Maofa, unfortunately we have run out of time, but we do thank you for giving us an update from what happened and what was discussed at this urgent meeting yesterday. We do hope to see that once that 600,000, like you've mentioned, is paid, that the community will be provided with water again. But we know that the problems there might not be solved, as the community might only have water for another month, 1 month at least. But now, murder-accused Christopher Panayotou is expected to make his 9th appearance in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court this morning. Panayotou is accused of orchestrating the murder of his school teacher wife, Jade. He was arrested 8 days after she was abducted in April. Last week, Friday, he was denied bail by Magistrate Abigail Beaton. Now, Beaton is expected to give her reasons for denying Panayotou bail today. The reasons will determine whether Panayotou's legal team will appeal the bail decision. The other 2 accused in this case have not applied for bail just yet. We cross to our reporter Janine Lee, who is outside of the Magistrates Court in PE this morning. It seems like weather conditions there are better today, Janine.
Yeah, I'm not complaining today. I mean, either we're getting blown right off our feet or we're getting drenched with rain. But the sun's shining today, so no complaints from my side.
Janine, every time Christopher has appeared in court, the court has been jam-packed. We've seen a lot of response to this case. How has the response been since he's been denied bail?
Well, you know, the response is, and the interest is still ongoing, I mean, but if we can say a little bit of the sting has been taken out of the tail, so to speak, because if you will remember that last week, Magistrate Beaton gave her ruling on Friday, and all she said was bail was denied, and she didn't give reasons. But just to go back a bit, she was actually scheduled to give her entire judgment on the Thursday before that Friday last week. But when she came into court that day, unlike what everybody expected, where she would have read her judgment, at the end of it said bail denied or bail granted, she didn't do that. She came in and she opened with a whole lot of questions. And many of those questions centered around the fact that Christopher Panayotou has a mistress, Chanel Coutts. Now, Chanel Coutts has not been arrested in this case, and she's walking about and she's back at work, we've heard. So what this actually means is there is a high possibility that Christopher Panayotou, when he is granted bail, there is the possibility that he may interfere with his mistress or perhaps intimidate her. She is going to be called as a state's witness, and there is speculation that she has information that will be incriminating to him. So, yeah, the cart before the horse. Possibly we've read the last chapter before reading the book, but today she's going to read into the record all her reasons why she said last Friday, no bail.
Janine, are we expecting to see an appeal from Christopher's team, legal team?
You know, Magistrate Beaton made it quite clear last week when she said that bail was denied. She said that she was expecting an appeal. So we can take it that she definitely has dotted her I's and crossed her T's as far as applying her mind to this particular judgment. She is anticipating an appeal. So what will happen today is she will give all her reasons, and then the defense will make a decision whether they think that her reasoning with regard to why she denied bail, either if they think it's sound or if they think there is a gap and there is cause for an appeal. So they're going to listen carefully today. If they think there is reason for appeal, they're going to take that information, and it won't be done in the court today. They will go behind doors and they will set about documenting all their reasons why there should be an appeal. This will then have to be sent to the High Court. A High Court date will have to be set. They're going to have to give notice to the state that they are going to appeal. And once it goes to the High Court, in a perfect world, and if things move really smoothly, possibly looking at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week, because a bail application or an appeal on the bail judgment cannot be a long drawn out thing. The accused is, if there is an appeal, he has a right then to get bail if the appeal is successful. But also what you must take into account, is that the judge at the High Court is going to have to read every single page of the record, and this has been going on for almost 3 weeks. So whoever that judge is, quite a big task in front of him or her. In a perfect world, maybe we will hear that appeal towards the end of next week, but at this stage we don't know whether or not the defence will appeal the no bail.
Janine, we know when Jade's body, as soon as she went missing actually, and then when her body was discovered, there was massive outcry from the community in Port Elizabeth. It seems like it's quite quiet outside of the court this morning. Are women in the community still gathering outside of court?
It is a little quiet now. I'll tell you why. Because we were expecting that Magistrate Beaton would start reading her judgment at 9 o'clock. My reporters who are inside court have just informed me that it's only going to now start happening at 11 o'clock. So that's possibly the reason why it's a little quiet outside court. But just to go back on what you said, I mean, this is not something that is going to fade from the public eye quickly. In fact, there are many suburbs in Port Elizabeth where they have yellow fabric tied around trees. Now, you might remember that yellow is the color that has been associated with justice for Jade. So anyone who wants to wear a yellow pin, perhaps tie yellow fabric around a tree in their neighborhood. And there's a neighborhood just up the road, a whole line of trees, I mean, all with yellow fabric tied around their trunks. So this is not something that's going to fade from the public eye very quickly, but also just to spare thought for the Panayotou family. They've just come out of their 40 days of mourning for Jade. You must remember, as much as they feel for their son Christopher Panayotou, Jade was their daughter-in-law. And we know from court record that Christopher's father was exceptionally fond of Jade, and he looked at her, upon her as his very own daughter. So they've come out of a 40-day mourning period. For that time, they all wore black. That ended on the 31st. We've had reports that they are now wearing lighter colors, not garish and loud colors, but not the dark black that they were wearing with respect to the passing of Jade Panayotou. So two families actually highly affected by somebody's death, and as I said, you know, it's ongoing. And wherever I go, on a social level, you know, if you go to a pub, if you go to someone's house for dinner, if you go for a bra, people are still talking about this case. So I think it's far from over.
Definitely, Janine, I feel it is a nation affected by this story, but we thank you for joining us today from outside of court. We will be keeping a close eye on what will be happening in court there today. Now, Cape Town labour unions representing most of the country's 1.3 million civil servants decided to withdraw from a 3-year pay deal with the state because of a dispute over its implementation. Let's take a look at the tweets that have been coming out on that topic. Today we'll see Thabo says the wage deal between public sector unions and the government breaks down. Yes, that's definitely what happens. Hashtagging unions over there. The next tweet says the withdrawal of labour unions from the wage deal with government means more strike action and new wage demands. Definitely fears of a looming strike there. Azania says the Kusatu-led unions withdrawing from the wage deal shows that the ANC-led government is taking them for granted. That's Azania's views. Snoopy says Kusatu is damaging the workers' struggle by their double standards with government. That's why workers are losing out on improved wages. Again, Snoopy says the people who need to be removed out of the ANC, who's hindering the process for the working class, and it's the top 5 and Kusatu executives. Well, quickly taking a look at your tweet of the day. Yesterday, the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, John Jeffrey, was part of the panel of the Daily Maverick's 2015 edition of The Gathering, facing a panel of activists from Section 27 and other organizations. Now, the tweet of the day comes from Live, Pray, Love, and he says, while the elites are protecting their livelihood, the poor have nowhere else to go but to the courts. Hashtag DM Nando's Gathering. Hashtag Section 27. That's his views on that gathering that took place. It's time to take a look at the front pages from around the globe. Starting in Europe, the Times reports that David Cameron rejected plans yesterday to strip ministers of the power to authorize snooping by Britain's spies, triggering a backlash from MPs. Then, moving to Israel, the Jerusalem Post says half a millennium after expelling its Jews, Spain passed a law granting the right of citizenships to their descendants yesterday afternoon. And in the UK, the Independent says it reports that Tony Abbott now claims to accept the science behind man-made climate change. His government is considered one of the most environmentally hostile in living memory. Time to take a look at what's happening around the country. We start in Cape Town, where suspended Western Cape Police Commissioner Arno Lemoer and his co-accused are expected back in court today. Lemoer and 5 others are facing 8 fraud and corruption charges. And moving to Johannesburg, the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court is expecting to hand down judgment in the case of Bongani Dladla, the man who raped his teen niece, impregnating her and then killing her child. Well, it's time now to take a break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, sorry, it's out of stock is a sentence thousands of South African patients have been hearing at health facilities across the country when waiting to receive essential medication. 1 in 4 public health facilities in the country ran out of at least one antiretroviral or tuberculosis drug over a 3-month survey period at the end of last year. In other provinces, drug supply remained erratic over the same 3 months. This is what's been shown in the second national Stop Stockout survey that was released yesterday at the 7th AIDS Conference in Durban. To talk to us about these shortages, we are joined from Durban by the project manager from Stop Stockouts, the project, Bella Young. Bella, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
If we can just start with what the government has said around the matter. We know the National Department of Health this week contributed the problem to a global shortages of medicines. What exactly is it that your report that has been released last night is showing?
So what our report shows is that 1 in 4 clinics, like you said, across the country during our survey period reported at least one ARV and TB stockout. We do this survey once a year at the 4th quarter of every year. And the survey shows really that 5 provinces are more affected by stockouts, and they're Mpumalanga, Northwest Province, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and Free State. There's actually 2 types of stockouts that we have. We have these acute flare-ups that happen, and that's what the Department of Health is talking about right now. Right now there's an extremely high amount of acute flare-ups of stockouts. We're seeing stockouts of penicillin, stockouts of BCG vaccines. What our survey shows is that we look at the big picture, so the bigger picture. So these chronic persistent stockouts that are silent. It's 1 district in the Eastern Cape, 1 district in Mpumalanga that's more affected. And these are less easy to see because this is when the medicine doesn't get from the medicine depot down to the clinic.
Bella,
our project has a, yeah.
No, sorry, you can continue.
Okay. Our project has on a day-to-day basis, we receive stockout reports from patients and from healthcare workers who are frustrated, and they call us on our free hotline, which is 084-855-7867. And from those reports, about 20% of those reports we get are caused by international issues, by national manufacturing issues, but the vast majority, about 80%, are really caused by logistical and management issues between the medicine depot and getting to the clinic. And this is related to a individual clinic ordering, individual clinic estimating the amount that they need for the next month, and a depot being able to deliver that amount that's been requested down to the clinic. So there's really those two types of stockouts, acute flare-ups and chronic persistent stockouts, and they have different causes and they need different solutions.
But there have been talks with the different provincial health authorities, and actually 5 provinces have now committed to action plans. Just tell us, what do these action plans entail? And then the other 4 provinces who have not committed to any action plans, what are the consequences going to be because they have not committed in those certain provinces?
So once the survey was finished, we met with National Department of Health, and we extended an invitation to the provincial departments of health to look at the survey results, to address it, to provide action plans. And like you said, 5 of those provinces did provide action plans. Those action plans involve looking at having accountable people down at the clinic level, having electronic ordering systems so that we have visibility. We know where the drugs are along the chain. Right now it's a manual, paper-based system, and lots of things get lost all along the chain. Those systems also look at adequate infrastructure, having enough storage space. Vaccines need to be stored in fridges. Those assessments need to be done, are going to be done, planned to be done in those 5 provinces. The other 4 provinces, actually every province has engaged with the results of the survey except for 1 province in KZN. We've been able to present the results of the survey to all of the provinces. Those 3 other provinces that haven't submitted action plans, we're still engaging with them, and we're looking for support from the National Department of Health to continue to push engagement, to produce action plans, and to look at what they need to do next to fix this problem.
Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but definitely worrying statistics from this report that was released last night, and I thank you for joining us just to talk a bit more about that. That's Bella Yang from Stop Stockouts, and talking about that report that was released at the AIDS conference last night. Now, a new survey related to shortages of essential HIV and tuberculosis medicine in South African provinces says there's a systematic obstacle to the success of the largest antiviral treatment program in the world. But before we get to that, we will look at the tweet of today. And today's tweet pick comes from Reuters. Opinion captioned, "The number of times African Americans were brutalized by police this year." That is a question coming in from your pick of the day. It's also time to take a look at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page today. South African public sector unions have withdrawn from the wage deal and threatened to strike after the government decided to unilaterally implement a lower pay offer, union officials said yesterday. And Nigeria and its neighboring countries agreed yesterday to set up a joint military force to counter Boko Haram, a sign of President Muhammadu Buhari's intent to crush the Islamic militant group earlier. And also government employees, business people and other professionals are registering as indigents on municipal databases to avoid paying for services. For more news and updates, you can follow us on our SABC Newsroom Facebook page, or you can also go to the SABC's website. That is www.sabc.co.za/news. Well, let's try again. Back in our Durban studio, a study conducted by the Human Science Research Council found that ignorance and negative behavioral attitude towards HIV and AIDS is still a major concern amongst most students at South African tertiary institutions. The study was conducted among 100 campuses around the country. 10% of the college students interviewed said they have never heard about HIV and AIDS. While others said they hardly used condoms due to limited distributions on these campuses. These findings were presented also last night during the 7th AIDS conference in Durban. Deputy Executive Director of the HIV, AIDS and TB program at the Human Science Research Council, Professor Jeffrey Setswe, is in the Durban studio and joins us today to talk about this. Jeffrey, can you hear me clearly this morning?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. definitely some concerning results from the study that you have conducted. Can we just talk about one of or some of the most concerning findings for you specifically?
Well, I think we should start with the good news. The good news is that level of knowledge are high, levels of attitude towards people living with HIV/AIDS are positive, and there's also a positive attitude towards the antiretroviral treatment programs. What one would call alarming is where people said they have not heard about AIDS. It's in 10% of students and 27% of staff. And we think it is people who feel that they are not at risk of HIV/AIDS.
Jeffrey, that is very concerning. 10% of people said they've never heard of HIV and AIDS, where we live in a country and in a continent where this is a major problem. So where are we then going wrong, making sure that this message of this disease does not get to all people?
I think AIDS has made a commitment, Higher Education AIDS program made a commitment that they are now going to reach out to all technical, vocational and educational colleges. Remember, there are people who are in the technical fields who have been part of the old technical colleges whose interest has only been, that line, and they've not been interested in the general life in South Africa. They need to be reached out with messages about HIV/AIDS. But on the other hand, remember, this was a self-report. It could have been that people are in denial. They are like, this HIV/AIDS is not there, it's not real. So it may not be true that they are saying that they've not heard about HIV/AIDS. It may be a sign of denial towards HIV/AIDS. But the programs are there to reach out to everyone who needs to have an understanding of HIV/AIDS, and the level of awareness in general was very high. And I think if we look at the general picture, a lot of students have knowledge, they are aware, and they've got positive attitude. The stigma has improved a lot against people living with HIV/AIDS.
Now, HIV infections is the highest amongst the age groups of 18 to 25. Is this because of the lifestyle we see young people are living?
Yes, the lifestyles of people aged 18 to 25 are quite risky. You notice that alcohol consumption was very high. 11% of students said they are smoking dacha. And, these lifestyles are putting them at risk of HIV/AIDS. And there's also sexual practices where people have relationships with older partners and also younger partners. Condom use was one of the issues that we found, that there was low condom use. It was only at around 55%, although it is in line with what the HSRC findings were for the major study. But we are still worried that in this target group it is low. So there are behaviors that are putting young people at risk of HIV/AIDS. But we know that in other studies, if there are interventions implemented, they are quick with the uptake. Things like colored condoms and flavored condoms found favor with young people at higher education institutions like TVET colleges.
There still is, however, negative attitudes from students towards using condoms. That group of negative students, why are we still seeing that take place?
Well, there's also anecdotal information. Remember, in research, we were asking people their condom use patterns. And there's a negative attitude towards the condom. They say the condoms are smelling bad. And that is why the department is talking about introducing colored and flavored condoms. And they are asking young people, which color they would favor and what type of flavor, would do well for them. So you go through a phase in the epidemic where people start looking for negative things around an intervention that is known to work. We know condoms work, but when they are being criticized, you find it difficult to understand the reasons why people criticize them. And the possibility is that they would find them uncomfortable, which is one of the attitudes expressed, that they are unnatural, that they are uncomfortable. So you have this proportion of students that may not like condoms.
Well, Jeffrey, we definitely hope that those attitudes will change. As we know, this is a problem that still needs a lot of combating. I thank you today for joining us from Durban, and best of luck as the conference wraps up today.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, that is Jeffrey Setswe from the Human Science Research Council. It's time now to take a break. We'll be back in a bit.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, after years of instability and unrest in Egypt, a recent shift in power and justice could bring a long-awaited change. The decade from the June War of 1967 to the January riots of 1977 brought on the first onset of change for Egypt. At the end of May this year, Egypt began tearing down the headquarters of the once dominant party of ex-President Hosni Mubarak that was torched during the 2011 uprising that toppled him. 2,600 people, nearly half of them supporters of the nation's ousted President Mohamed Morsi, were killed in violence over an 18-month period, which started on the 30th of June in 2013. Now, Egypt could be nearing a new era of transformation, and here to talk to us about this is the researcher from the Afro-Middle Eastern Center, Ibrahim Dean. Ibrahim, I thank you today for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The tearing down of the headquarters, let's just start there. Is this actually a symbolic sign of really a new era of transformation in Egypt?
It's more, an attempt to create a facade of change. So in Egypt, we had, the 2011 uprising. We then had Mohamed Morsi. And after Mohamed Morsi, we had a military coup, which deposed Mohamed Morsi. The military coup are basically similar or were remnants of the previous Mubarak regime. So it's in a sense trying to pull the wool over normal Egyptians' eyes, trying to make them think that yes, this is moving forward in the process of the revolution, while in actual fact it seems, and it's now been 2 years, and it's actually a counter-revolution that has been successfully instituted.
Mubarak was sentenced to 3 years in prison earlier. We also saw Morsi could be facing a death sentence. Is this giving any hope to the people of Egypt?
I mean, I think emblematic of what's happening in Egypt is we need to look at the two outcomes of the sentences. So Mubarak, yes, he'd been sentenced for 2 to 3 years for bribery and corruption, but he's actually being freed. Whilst Morsi is actually facing the death sentence. So we're seeing a regime, the new regime, actually seek to protect those during the pre-2011 regime, and we're seeing a demonization of the Morsi, of the Muslim Brotherhood, and this shows is one of the signs that this actually is a counter-revolution that's happening, and that Egypt's not actually progressing, but more is actually regressing towards what it had experienced during the Mubarak era.
Wow. Then in terms of moving forward, what kind of intervention is needed?
I mean, I think the biggest intervention at the moment is going to be taken internationally. I think that the Sisi regime has consolidated power in Egypt, and that it's very stable at the moment, and that the only thing that can bring it to a path of democracy is actually international condemnation. And in this light, it's very interesting to note that the African Union Commission has agreed that it look into charges that the Sisi regime has committed war crimes and crimes against humanity in the past year and a half.
Yes, we see that activists say over 40,000 people, mainly Islamists, have been detained or prosecuted. This religion gap within Egypt, what is it currently doing to the country? Is it worsening?
I don't think it's necessarily a religion gap. I think it's religion being used as a political means. So the Sisi regime does use religion in its attempts to quell the Muslim Brotherhood. It has been backed by the Saudis. The Salafist Al-Nur party had supported the Sisi regime. So it's not necessarily a religion gap, but more a fact that there's polarization between, or at least in the moment, polarization between Democrats and autocrats.
Under the leadership of President Abdel, Egypt now for the last year, what have we seen happening? And hopefully, looking forward, what are we going to see happening?
I mean, we've seen a crackdown on protesters. We've seen, freedom of movement, freedom of accessibility, freedom of association, freedom to protest being cracked down on. But we have also seen, this has brought stability to the country. If we're looking, democracy and stability are not necessarily coincidental. And so we've seen stability, and I think going forward, the stabilities will continue. But I think, if there's no opening up of spaces for political opposition, for dissidents to operate, then we may see militancy increase. And the militancy that's currently, occurring in the Sinai region in North Sinai may actually spread to the Delta. And if the militancy from the Sinai spreads to the Delta, this is very dangerous for Egypt, for the Middle East, and actually for shipping routes through the Suez Canal, if we want to put it more internationally, and we may then oil prices, goods prices may actually increase if this happens.
The forecast, if oil prices do increase, I think for the rest of the continent then?
I mean, I think oil prices will increase from their lows. I think specifically because of the conflicts in Yemen, the conflicts in Syria, with the rise of the Islamic State. I think the Iranian nuclear deal with the impending one, which will most likely be signed, may put a bit of a dampener. But I think, in terms of economic growth and the fact that the global economy has started growing again, oil prices are likely to increase.
All right. Well, Ibrahim Dean from the Afro-Middle Eastern Center, I thank you today for giving us a bit of an update. Of course, we need to make sure that we know what is going on in our continent, and thank you for coming in to join us today for that update. Now, a new survey releases shows that shortages of essential HIV and tuberculosis medicine in most African provinces are a systematic obstacle to the success of the largest antiretroviral treatment program in the world, said the civil society organization Stop Stockouts project during the South African AIDS conference currently underway in Durban. Now, let's just have a look at what you've been saying about this drug shortage. Please remember to send us your tweets and your views to @SABC Newsroom. Lucky there says the drug shortage hits South Africa. This is definitely a crisis. Yes, as we've heard earlier, it is. AIDS Accountability says the Ministry of Health needs another oversight mechanisms to ensure it resolves the problems we encounter. Well, we know that work has been done there. This tweet says acknowledged medical shortages, load shedding and emergency personnel not having proper equipment. What is going on? Well, those are your views. Remember to keep on sending them to us. Now, this week, the junior Boks have shown their caliber of talent in South Africa by qualifying for the Under-20 World Cup semi-finals. Here to talk to us about all things rugby today. Unfortunately, Julian, I am Afrikaans girl, so we're going to have to stick to rugby, but we're very short of time today. Julian is the I2I senior partner, Julian de la Hunt, and he joins us to quickly tell us what is going on with the Boks. I think we can be so proud, the junior Boks.
Yeah, good morning, Anine. So I think from a junior Bok perspective, we always talk about these big tournaments being momentous occasions, obviously, for the teams, and they're really about well-timed moments of excellence. So the junior Boks started off slowly, but they really have gathered momentum, and played a fantastic game against Australia in their last pool game, and obviously are now heading into the semi-finals against England. That will be on Monday evening.
And you said this is definitely peaking at the right time.
Absolutely. It's all about peaking at the right time. It's about all the combinations coming together at the right time in big tournaments, and that's exactly where this junior team are going at the moment. It's looking great for South African, the future of South African rugby, and there's some really good youngsters that have come through and put their hands up to be counted.
I think they've given us so much excitement for the World Cup that is now less than 100 days away. So let's quickly touch on that. I've got all the pools in front of me.
Yeah.
South Africa in Pool B will be facing Samoa, Japan, Scotland. What does that pool look like for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in every of the last kind of 4 World Cups, we seem to face the big hitting Samoans. So that's going to be a tough one. Heineke and his Springbok management team are spending a lot of time already with the teams congregating and really just starting to work through get the motions going and really pull the guys together. So I think that pool will be, while it will be a tough pool, I think South Africa should come out comfortably on top of that pool. In some of the other pools, if we look at some of the favourites across the World Cup, England have to be one of the favourites going into a home World Cup. Obviously, Ireland being the Six Nations champions, and then obviously the likes of New Zealand and Australia. I think for the first time, Australia might be finding it a little bit difficult getting out of the pool stages. They're in a very strong group at this stage.
They are.
So yeah, I think an exciting World Cup in European conditions with a lot of South Africans who are currently playing in Europe who potentially might be in the fold for being selected.
All right, well then, moving then from World Cup rugby to the Super 15. All right, I know we've got all the logs on our graphics. Let's just quickly talk who's top of the log.
Yeah, so Hurricanes obviously on top of the log at the moment. It's really been an all New Zealand affair, unfortunately, this year, with the Stormers being the only South African team who obviously are still in the runnings for a semi-final. They play the Sharks this weekend, and if you can see on the board up here...
Well, let's just... the Sharks, I'm from Natal. What happened last weekend?
Yeah, well, I mean...
well, they haven't been doing well.
It's been a tough season for the Sharks. Leadership, it's been very clear this season. If we talk about the strong leadership, the Lions have to be mentioned.
Exactly.
Dynamism, an absolute synergy. It shows you what can be done with a team with relatively few superstars, but great leadership, great team cultures and dynamics and synergies in a team like the Lions. As I said, the Stormers, they'll be resting a whole host of players this weekend, and you don't necessarily want to break your momentum going into a semi-final in the next couple of weekends. So that might be a tough one for them. Come away from a Sharks match with a loss, that might be very difficult for them to then bounce back in the semi-finals.
Well, Julian, we are so tight today, but thank you for coming in. That's Julian de la Hunt, talking rugby to us this morning, of course, ahead of the weekend, ahead of the Rugby World Cup. But now, 4 local musicians have gained an international fan base by sharing their songs online and via social media. Since their first single, Just Listen, which has released in February last year, their fan base has reached as far as Brazil and India. Joining us today in studio is the Stonehouse Project, and with me here is Jana Oosthuizen and Michelle Lohm. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
And it's a guy.
Okay, yes, and obviously you've got a +1. 2 ladies with 1 guy, you're a lucky guy.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah. Oh, please.
Quickly. What are you all about before we play out with you?
Jana?
Well, the Stonehouse Project is basically a musical platform where we invite different musicians to help us make music, write new songs. So it's kind of a rent-a-guest artist situation. Yeah.
Your music has reached other countries in the world through social media, through the internet. What a role is this playing for young artists who really want to make a name for themselves?
Well, I think it's kind of big because... especially if you're new in the whole industry of the music or the arts itself, it's kind of big. Especially we're 2 years. We're startup, so we're 2 years in it, and we're already going big, or international based, if I can put it like that.
Okay. And then maybe we can end with you. What are you all about? Where can we get your music? Where are you performing?
We are on all social media platforms, so you can get us on Twitter, Facebook. SoundCloud, you can also listen to our songs on SoundCloud. There is the new song that we will be playing out now. What's the song?
With or without
So
you.
without you.
On
That
iTunes,
it is on
yes.
iTunes, so you can go download with or without you on iTunes if you want.
Perfect. So great seeing young people doing such awesome things, guys. We wish you the best of luck and thank you for coming in today.
Thanks, mate.
That is a Stonehouse project. Like they said, you can find their music online. But we thank you for joining us today. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 o'clock. We also stream live on YouTube that time with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.
Experience with this, trying to be smart and brave at the same time, get a grip on this. I know it's just a matter of time. I can't be your savior and I don't expect you to be mine, and I shift and change just like the weather. Are you sure you can't promise me forever? And wait before you fall in love with me. Stop before you decide that I'm the one to set you free. I'm not strong enough for more than just me. So wait before you fall in love with me, with or without you, with or without you, with or without you. Wait before you fall in love with me.
I must say that goal was outstanding.
Made so much dust that I couldn't see, and I hit a stone, and we had a puncture.
Catch all these and more every day on Sports Live at 8:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
SABC News seeks to be the biggest, the most extensive and diverse news organization on the continent. Our mission is to provide accurate and credible news and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are committed to covering every part of the continent. We reflect the world to Africa and Africa to the world. SABC News, Africa's news leader. Now available throughout the continent.
The issue becomes on how you do what you want to do in effecting change. Change has to happen. There's no question about that.
African heroes who have not been feted, who do not have the statues and the memorials.
We misunderstood reconciliation to mean status quo should be preserved in some instances.
I was asking people who are managing Hector Peterson, they said to us, no, the person who's cleaning the area, an ordinary person, not even the curator, somebody who's cleaning, the area there, an ordinary person in the street will fight with you if you do anything wrong with those statues.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.